Picture this. You wake up to chaos. No power, no cell service, no grocery stores open. The unthinkable just happened, and you've got zero warning. Here's the harsh reality. Most Americans think they're prepared, but FEMA's data reveals a shocking truth. When disaster strikes, 90% of households run out of essentials within 72 hours. That's 3 days before you're in serious trouble. But here's what separates survivors from victims: having the right items in the right quantities, stored the right way. Welcome back. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into FEMA's official emergency supply checklist. The 15 non-negotiable items that could mean the difference between riding out the storm and becoming another casualty statistic. Some of these will surprise you. Others might save your life tomorrow. We're covering everything from the obvious must-haves to the critical items hiding in plain sight that most people completely overlook. Ready to bulletproof your home? Let's jump in. And hey, if this saves your family someday, hit that subscribe button. Your future self will thank you. Point 15. Fire extinguisher. When a major disaster strikes, fire quickly becomes one of the most dangerous and unpredictable threats in your home. FEMA insists that every household should have fire extinguishers, not as a suggestion, but as a vital survival necessity. The aftermath of severe storms, quakes, or hurricanes can leave your wiring exposed, gas lines leaking, and open flames from candles or stoves ready to ignite anything they touch. Fires in this environment are not rare, and they can spread with shocking speed. According to the National Fire Protection Association, a simple kitchen fire can take over an entire room in just a few minutes, especially if you can't douse it before help arrives. The reality is, if you're waiting on firefighters during or after a major emergency, you might be waiting far too long. Emergency crews in rural areas average around 14 minutes before reaching the scene, far more time than it takes a fire to tear through a home. Even in cities, backup might not make it in 5 minutes if they're stretched thin by widespread destruction. That's why FEMA specifically urges the use of multi-purpose extinguishers with an ABC rating. These are designed to handle 3 main threats: ordinary combustibles like paper and wood, flammable liquids like gasoline, and fires involving electrical equipment. But just owning an extinguisher doesn't help if you don't know where to store it or how to use it. Keep one in high-risk areas, especially on each floor, in the kitchen and the garage. Practice using it. A quick run-through of the pass method: pull the pin, aim low, squeeze the handle, sweep side to side, can make all the difference in a real emergency. Don't skimp on this skill. Those 30 seconds might be all you get to prevent a disaster. Point 14. Extra cash. Having a stash of physical cash might feel outdated in our debit card world, but FEMA's guidelines treat it as an absolute staple for disaster readiness. When the grid goes down, like during Hurricanes Maria or Katrina, powerless ATMs and offline card readers render digital money useless. Reports from recent disasters show that families who kept cash on hand could buy gas, groceries, and medicine, while others were left empty-handed as thousands waited in endless lines at banks, hoping they'd open in time. FEMA recommends keeping enough cash at home to get your family through at least 2 weeks. The amount depends on your household size and living costs, but a few $100s in small bills, $1 to $5 and $10, is far better than a $100 bill the corner store can't break. When credit and debit systems are down, businesses revert to a cash-only policy. No amount of pleading will help if you can't pay on the spot, and even large retail chains have switched to cash-only operations in disaster zones. It's not just about how much cash you store, it's where you keep it. Don't leave your funds all in one spot. Hide small amounts in several secure places throughout your home, in case part of the house becomes inaccessible or compromised. And forget about rushing to the bank once the storm hits. Most branches either close or face overwhelming demand. Cash is the one currency that still works when everything else fails. Point 13. Sleeping bags and warm blankets. Staying warm in a disaster is about much more than comfort. It's about staying alive. Power outages from blizzards, hurricanes, or grid failures can make your home dangerously cold in hours. Hypothermia can happen faster than you think, and not just in Arctic conditions. Even indoor temps in the 50s paired with dampness can spell trouble, especially for children and the elderly. The tragic winter storm in Texas took more lives to cold exposure than to direct storm damage, showing how fragile we can be when the heat goes out. FEMA stresses having multiple layers of protection for every household member. Look for sleeping bags rated well below your area's record low temps. These retain warmth more reliably than standard blankets, especially if you're forced to shelter in a car, basement, or unheated room. For extra insurance, stash a few Mylar emergency blankets. They're super light, cheap, and reflect up to 90% of your body heat, making them perfect for wrapping inside or over your regular blankets. Preparation means you're ready for nights stuck anywhere. Not just your bedroom, but your car or a temporary shelter. Make sure everyone in the house knows where to find these supplies. Insulation isn't a luxury in emergencies. It's the line between a cold, scary night and a potentially fatal collapse. When disaster hits and the temperature drops, your ability to stay warm will matter more than anything else in your kit. Point 12. Local maps. When chaos strikes and technology fails, a simple paper map becomes your most valuable navigation tool. FEMA doesn't just recommend local maps, they consider them essential survival equipment because digital navigation systems are far more fragile than people realize. In 2025, we've grown dangerously dependent on GPS and smartphone navigation, but disasters have a nasty habit of exposing the vulnerabilities in our high-tech world. Cell towers collapse under hurricane winds, earthquakes sever fiber optic cables, and widespread power outages can knock satellite communication systems offline for days or weeks. During California's massive wildfire evacuations, countless families found themselves driving blind through smoke-filled valleys because their phones had no signal and their GPS systems displayed nothing but blank screens. Many missed crucial evacuation routes that were literally one street over, simply because they had no backup navigation method. A comprehensive local map collection should include detailed street maps of your city, county-wide maps showing rural roads and alternate routes, and regional maps covering potential evacuation corridors extending at least 100 miles in every direction. FEMA specifically recommends marking critical locations before disaster strikes: hospitals, emergency shelters, fuel stations, grocery stores, and multiple escape routes leading away from high-risk areas like flood zones or wildfire corridors. The real power of physical maps lies in their independence from external systems and their ability to provide strategic perspective. While GPS tells you one route, a map shows you dozens of possibilities. You can identify backroads that bypass major highways, spot elevation changes that affect flood risks, and plan multiple contingency routes depending on which areas become impassable. Keep waterproof markers and highlighters in your emergency kit so you can update routes in real time as conditions change and roads close. Invest in laminated or waterproof maps when possible, but even basic gas station maps stored in Ziploc bags provide infinitely more value than a dead smartphone. Maps transform you from a passive recipient of evacuation instructions into an active navigator capable of making informed decisions about your family's safety. Point 11. Cell phone with backup power. Your smartphone represents the most powerful survival tool in your pocket, but only if it stays powered when everything else fails. FEMA emphasizes backup power solutions because modern disasters can knock out electrical grids for days or weeks, turning your communication lifeline into an expensive paperweight. Beyond basic communication, your phone provides weather alerts, emergency broadcasts, GPS navigation when cellular towers function, banking access, flashlight capability, and even entertainment to maintain morale during extended isolation. However, the average smartphone battery dies within 12 hours under normal use, and during emergencies, your usage patterns spike dramatically as you check weather updates, coordinate with family members, and seek critical information. Building a comprehensive backup power system requires multiple redundant solutions. High-capacity power banks with at least 20,000 mAh capacity can provide 4 to 6 complete phone charges, but you need to keep them charged and accessible. Solar charging panels with minimum 25-watt output become essential for extended outages, allowing you to harvest energy even from partial sunlight or indirect daylight through windows. Car chargers provide another backup option if your vehicle remains functional and fuel supplies last. Cable management becomes surprisingly critical during chaotic situations. Keep charging cables in every emergency kit, your home kit, vehicle kit, workplace bag, and go bag. Nothing creates more frustration than having backup power, but no way to connect it to your device. Consider purchasing multiple cables because they break, get lost, or become damaged more easily than the power sources themselves. Maximize your phone's survival potential through strategic settings management. Enable low power mode immediately when grid power fails. Disable unnecessary background apps and automatic updates. Reduce screen brightness, and turn off Bluetooth and Wi-Fi when not actively needed. Download offline maps of your region before disasters strike, since cellular data becomes unreliable or impossible during widespread emergencies. Remember that during major disasters like Haiti's earthquake, people with functioning phones could coordinate rescue efforts, receive medical guidance, and maintain family connections that proved psychologically crucial for survival. Those without power found themselves completely isolated from vital information and support networks. Point 10. Manual can opener. The manual can opener might seem mundane, but FEMA includes it on their critical items list because it represents the crucial bridge between having emergency food supplies and actually being able to consume them. This simple tool becomes absolutely essential when you realize that most emergency food storage relies heavily on canned goods for their long shelf life and nutritional density. Electric can openers become completely worthless the moment power grids fail, which happens in virtually every major disaster scenario. Attempting to open cans with knives, rocks, or improvised tools creates serious injury risks at the worst possible time. During emergencies when medical facilities may be overwhelmed or inaccessible, even minor cuts can develop into serious infections that compromise your survival chances. Quality matters enormously when selecting manual can openers for emergency use. Flimsy models from discount stores often seize up, break, or leave dangerous jagged edges after minimal use. Invest in sturdy stainless steel models with smooth turning cranks and comfortable grips that can handle continuous use across multiple days. Military-style P38 can openers offer ultra-compact backup options, though they require more effort and time to operate effectively. Strategic placement and redundancy prevent critical failures when you need this tool most. Keep your primary can opener stored directly with your canned food supplies, not buried in kitchen drawers where it might be forgotten or become inaccessible. Place secondary openers in your vehicle emergency kit and portable go bags, since you might need to access canned food while away from home. Consider the psychological impact of food accessibility during high-stress situations. When you're already dealing with power outages, potential evacuation, and family safety concerns, struggling to access your emergency food supplies adds unnecessary stress and wastes precious energy. A reliable can opener eliminates frustration and ensures that your carefully planned food storage actually serves its intended purpose. The simple reality is that without a functional manual can opener, your canned emergency food transforms from a survival asset into an inaccessible reminder of poor preparation. This inexpensive tool literally stands between your family and starvation during extended disasters. Point 9. Wrench and pliers. When disaster strikes your home, these two simple tools become your first line of defense against catastrophic secondary damage. FEMA doesn't classify wrenches and pliers as optional workshop equipment. They're essential emergency response tools that could prevent your house from becoming a smoking crater or flooded ruin in the critical minutes after a disaster hits. The most immediate threat following earthquakes, hurricanes, or severe storms involves compromised utility lines running into your home. Natural gas lines fracture under shifting foundations, water mains burst from ground movement, and electrical systems short-circuit from moisture infiltration. Without the ability to quickly shut off these utilities, you're facing exponentially worse destruction than the original disaster caused. FEMA's research shows that post-disaster house fires increase by up to 300% within the first 48 hours, with the majority stemming from damaged gas connections that could have been prevented with one simple valve turn. An adjustable wrench handles most residential gas shutoff valves, which typically require a quarter-turn counterclockwise to completely stop gas flow. However, corroded or stuck valves demand the superior gripping power that only quality pliers can provide. The combination gives you redundant capability to control your home's most dangerous utility systems under pressure. Strategic placement matters enormously during crisis situations when seconds count. FEMA recommends zip tying your gas shutoff wrench directly to your meter location, eliminating precious time spent hunting for tools while potentially deadly gas accumulates. Similarly, keep pliers near your main water shutoff valve, usually located where the service line enters your home. Beyond utility control, these tools serve critical secondary functions during extended emergencies. Multi-tools with integrated cutting edges help repair generator fuel lines, tighten tarp anchors over damaged windows, and perform dozens of other emergency repairs that keep your shelter functional. When professional repair services become unavailable for days or weeks, your ability to maintain basic home systems directly impacts your family's survival odds. Point 8. Sanitation supplies. The collapse of sanitation systems represents one of the most dangerous yet overlooked aspects of disaster survival. When water treatment plants fail and sewage systems back up, your home environment can transform from safe haven to disease incubator within 72 hours. FEMA's sanitation requirements aren't about comfort, they're about preventing the secondary health disasters that kill more people than the original catastrophe. Historical evidence supports this brutal reality. Following Haiti's devastating earthquake, cholera outbreaks killed thousands more people than the initial structural collapse because sanitation infrastructure disappeared overnight. Hurricane Florence's aftermath saw widespread norovirus infections sweep through evacuation centers where basic hygiene became impossible to maintain. The pattern repeats globally. When sanitation fails, disease spreads exponentially through displaced populations. FEMA's core sanitation supplies focus on waste management and personal hygiene when conventional systems disappear. Heavy-duty garbage bags become essential for improvised toilet systems. The basic setup involves a 5-gallon bucket lined with thick trash bags, sealed and removed after each use. This prevents waste accumulation that attracts disease-carrying insects and creates toxic air quality in confined spaces. Moist toilets serve multiple critical functions beyond basic cleaning. They provide effective hand sanitization when soap and running water become unavailable, enable full-body cleaning that prevents skin infections, and work as surface disinfectants for food preparation areas. Alcohol-based wipes offer superior antimicrobial protection, killing bacteria and viruses that cause gastroenteritis, respiratory infections, and skin diseases. Plastic ties serve crucial containment functions, sealing waste bags securely and creating airtight barriers that prevent odor and contamination spread. During Japan's 2011 tsunami, evacuation centers that maintained strict waste isolation protocols experienced significantly lower illness rates than facilities where sanitation broke down completely. The mathematics of disease transmission in disaster scenarios are sobering. Without proper sanitation, bacterial contamination doubles every few hours in warm, humid conditions. What starts as minor stomach discomfort can escalate to life-threatening dehydration when medical care becomes inaccessible. Point 7. Plastic sheeting and duct tape. These seemingly mundane household items represent your primary defense against invisible atmospheric threats that can prove more lethal than the disaster itself. FEMA's emphasis on plastic sheeting and duct tape stems from harsh lessons learned during chemical emergencies, toxic smoke events, and radiological incidents where the greatest danger comes from simply breathing contaminated air. The shelter-in-place concept requires creating an airtight sealed room within minutes when external air becomes poisonous. This isn't theoretical preparation, it's proven life-saving protocol used during actual emergencies. When a chlorine train derailment occurred in Graniteville, South Carolina, residents who successfully sealed their homes survived while those who attempted evacuation faced lethal exposure levels. Creating an effective sealed room requires strategic material deployment. Select an interior room with minimal windows and doors, preferably without exterior walls that might have hidden air leaks. Cover every air entry point, windows, doors, vents, electrical outlets, and pipe penetrations, using plastic sheeting cut to overlap significantly beyond the opening dimensions. Duct tape provides the crucial airtight seal, but application technique matters enormously. Industrial-grade plastic sheeting offers superior performance compared to lightweight painter's plastic. Minimum 4 mm thickness resists tearing during emergency installation, while transparent material allows you to monitor outside conditions without compromising your seal. Pre-cut sheets to match your chosen safe room dimensions, because measuring and cutting during a chemical emergency wastes critical time and increases exposure risk. Beyond atmospheric protection, plastic sheeting serves vital secondary functions during extended disasters. Large sheets can patch roof damage, preventing water infiltration that destroys stored supplies and creates mold growth. They provide emergency window covering when glass breaks, maintaining interior temperature control and security. Multiple layers create effective insulation barriers when heating systems fail. Duct tape's versatility extends far beyond sealing applications. Its waterproof adhesive bonds to virtually any surface, making emergency repairs possible on everything from torn tarps to cracked water containers. The strong backing material can reinforce damaged gear, secure loose structural elements, and even provide temporary medical applications like splint reinforcement. During extended emergencies when supply chains collapse, these common materials become irreplaceable resources for maintaining habitability and safety in your home environment. Point 6. Dust masks and N95 respirators. When disaster strikes, the air you breathe can quickly transform from life-sustaining oxygen into a toxic cocktail that threatens your survival. FEMA doesn't just suggest respiratory protection, they classify it as essential equipment because contaminated air kills faster and more silently than most other disaster-related hazards. The aftermath of any major catastrophe creates airborne dangers that most people never consider until they're gasping for clean breath. Wildfire smoke contains microscopic particles that penetrate deep into lung tissue, causing immediate respiratory distress and long-term damage. Building collapses release clouds of concrete dust, asbestos fibers, and chemical residues that can scar lung tissue permanently. Flooding creates perfect conditions for mold spores that multiply exponentially, triggering severe allergic reactions and respiratory infections. Even seemingly clean post-disaster air often carries elevated levels of dust, debris, and potentially dangerous microorganisms. Standard comfort masks and surgical masks provide minimal protection during these scenarios. Comfort masks only capture large particles, allowing dangerous microscopic contaminants to pass through easily. Surgical masks are designed to prevent outward transmission of germs rather than filtering incoming air, and they leak significantly around the edges. 95 respirators represent the gold standard for disaster preparedness because they filter at least 95% of airborne particles down to 0.3 microns, small enough to block most smoke particles, dust, and many biological contaminants. The health consequences of breathing contaminated air extend far beyond immediate discomfort. During California's devastating 2020 wildfire season, emergency room visits for respiratory complications more than doubled in affected regions. Many victims developed chronic breathing problems, weakened immune systems, and increased susceptibility to respiratory infections months after initial exposure. Children and elderly family members face even greater risks because their respiratory systems are more vulnerable to airborne toxins. Storage and accessibility matter critically for respiratory protection. Keep multiple N95 masks for each family member, sealed in clean plastic bags to prevent contamination. Replace masks regularly, since rubber straps deteriorate over time and filtration efficiency decreases with age. When disaster strikes and air quality becomes hazardous, having proper respiratory protection means the difference between maintaining your health and requiring emergency medical treatment when hospitals are overwhelmed. Point 5. Emergency whistle. An emergency whistle might appear insignificant compared to high-tech survival gadgets, but FEMA includes it on their critical items list because it represents one of the most reliable and effective rescue tools available. When you're trapped, injured, or separated from help, this simple device can mean the difference between rapid rescue and prolonged suffering and isolation. Human voices have severe limitations during emergency situations. Shouting exhausts your energy quickly, strains your throat, and often fails to carry over background noise like storm winds, heavy rain, or urban chaos. Your voice also weakens with dehydration, stress, and fatigue, exactly the conditions you'll face during disasters. Sound waves from whistles behave differently than vocal calls, producing sharper, more penetrating tones that travel much greater distances and cut through ambient noise more effectively. During Hurricane Katrina, countless survivors found themselves trapped in attics, on rooftops, or in collapsed structures where conventional calling for help proved futile. Those equipped with whistles were consistently rescued faster because the distinct, piercing sound could be heard over helicopter rotors, heavy machinery, and storm damage. Search and rescue teams are specifically trained to recognize whistle signals and can often locate victims from over a quarter-mile away in open terrain. FEMA recommends P-less whistle designs because they contain no moving parts that can jam with moisture, debris, or freezing temperatures. Look for models producing at least 100 decibels of sound output, loud enough to penetrate through building materials and compete with disaster-related noise. The universal SOS signal consists of 3 short blasts repeated at regular intervals, a pattern recognized globally by rescue personnel. Strategic placement ensures your whistle remains accessible when you need it most. Attach whistles to your emergency go bag, keychain, and even your belt during active disasters. If you become trapped or injured, conserve energy by signaling once per minute rather than continuously, but maintain consistency so rescuers can triangulate your location. Unlike electronic devices that fail when batteries die or circuits get damaged, a quality whistle will function reliably under the harshest conditions and could literally save your life when all other communication methods fail. Point 4. Comprehensive first aid kit. A well-equipped first aid kit transforms from a helpful household item into an essential survival tool when disasters overwhelm medical infrastructure and professional help becomes unavailable. FEMA emphasizes comprehensive medical supplies because injuries that seem minor under normal circumstances can quickly escalate into life-threatening complications when hospitals are unreachable or operating beyond capacity. Disasters create perfect conditions for medical emergencies through multiple pathways. Debris causes cuts and puncture wounds, structural damage leads to falls and crushing injuries, broken glass creates lacerations, and hazardous materials cause burns and chemical exposure. Even more dangerous, post-disaster environments harbor increased infection risks through contaminated water, unsanitary conditions, and compromised immune systems weakened by stress and inadequate nutrition. Essential first aid supplies must address immediate trauma care and ongoing health maintenance. Stock adhesive bandages in multiple sizes, sterile gauze pads, medical tape, antiseptic wipes, antibiotic ointment, tweezers for splinter removal, scissors, disposable gloves, and both over-the-counter pain relievers and anti-inflammatory medications. However, FEMA recommends expanding beyond basic supplies to include burn gel for fire-related injuries, antihistamines for allergic reactions, anti-diarrheal medications for contaminated water exposure, and digital thermometers for monitoring potential infections. Prescription medication management becomes critically important for family members with chronic health conditions. Maintain at least a 30-day emergency supply of essential medications because pharmacies may remain closed for weeks and prescription refills become impossible. Work with your doctor in advance to obtain emergency supplies and ensure proper storage conditions to maintain medication effectiveness. The most sophisticated first aid kit provides no value without knowledge and training. Even basic first aid certification through organizations like the Red Cross equips you with skills to control bleeding, stabilize fractures, recognize signs of shock, and provide appropriate care until professional medical help arrives. During Hurricane Harvey's aftermath, many survivors suffered serious infections from floodwater-contaminated cuts that could have been prevented with proper wound cleaning and dressing techniques. Point 3. Emergency radio. When disaster severs your connection to news and updates, an emergency radio isn't just a convenience, it's a vital survival tool. FEMA stresses the importance of owning a battery-powered solar or hand-crank emergency radio because major disasters routinely knock out cell towers, internet access, and television signals, isolating you from critical evacuation orders and updates about fast-changing conditions. While your phone might be useless without power or reception, an emergency radio taps into the NOAA Weather Network, which is designed to keep broadcasting National Weather Service alerts and FEMA instructions even as infrastructure collapses elsewhere. These broadcasts often contain evacuation routes, details of nearby aid stations, and changes in local hazard conditions, information you can't afford to miss. The lessons of Hurricane Sandy echo this clearly. Whole neighborhoods went without aid simply because they missed radio broadcasts announcing where to find help. Choosing a model with multiple power sources is key. Look for radios that offer hand crank, solar charging, and USB power, ensuring you're not left in the dark if one method fails. Some models even pull double duty with built-in flashlights, emergency sirens, and USB ports that can briefly charge a dead phone for a last-ditch call or text. The real power of an emergency radio? You're informed, giving you the edge to make smart, timely decisions before, during, and after disaster strikes. Point 2. Non-perishable food. FEMA's guidelines on emergency food are clear. Don't wait until store shelves are empty. Disruptions can transform a full grocery aisle into a bare wasteland overnight, making your own food stockpile a must. The absolute minimum, according to FEMA, is a 3-day supply of ready-to-eat, non-perishable food for every person in your household, though relying solely on that bare minimum is a risky bet. Real crises often last longer than 3 days, with some families stranded for a week or more after hurricanes and winter storms. The right emergency food isn't just about calories, it's about practicality. Canned tuna, beans, ready-to-eat soups, peanut butter, and protein bars are popular for a reason. They're filling, require no refrigeration, and often no cooking. Freeze-dried meals and high-quality MREs, meals ready to eat, are also great options, especially since some can last 20 years or more if stored properly. Don't forget the needs of infants, elderly family members, or anyone with food allergies. Set aside specialty items to keep everyone safe and comfortable. Rotate your stock at least once a year to avoid spoilage, and clearly mark dates with a permanent marker so you're never caught off guard by expired goods. Include disposable utensils and manual can openers in your kit so nothing stands between you and your next meal. The bottom line, a well-planned food supply ensures you can weather any storm, literally and figuratively, without risking your health or sanity. Point 1. Water. No emergency supply is more critical than water, which tops FEMA's survival checklist for good reason. Human beings can go days without food, but only a handful of days without water. The agency recommends storing at least 1 gallon per person per day, for a minimum of 3 days. Though again, more is always better, especially in hot climates or active households. Water shortages arrive fast and hit hard during disasters. Pipes can freeze or burst, contaminants can infiltrate municipal water supplies, and stores may close or sell out in hours. That's why your water should be stored in clean, food-safe containers and kept away from heat and light to prevent algae and bacteria growth. Commercially bottled water lasts about a year. If filling your own containers, swap out the water every 6 months. A robust emergency plan also includes water purification tablets or portable filters, which can make questionable water sources, like rain barrels or streams, safe to drink. Boiling water is the gold standard for purification, but that depends on having both heat and clean cookware, so be prepared with alternatives. Don't forget, water isn't just for drinking. You'll need it for basic sanitation, food prep, and pets. In some cases, your home's hot water heater can be tapped as an emergency source, and knowing how to safely access that water beforehand is a smart move. Ultimately, your water supply is what stands between you and dehydration, illness, or worse in a crisis. Adequate storage and purification means you'll have one less thing to worry about in the chaos of an emergency, putting you a critical step ahead when everything else is uncertain.